The moment I understood those words spoken in a language he thought I couldn't comprehend, I felt something inside me crack clean through. Not a loud break, not the kind that draws attention or makes a scene. Just a quiet, final snap, like a thread pulled too tight for too long. My name is Sarah, and for 12 years I believed I had a good marriage. Not the fairy tale kind you see in movies, but good enough. The kind where you wake up beside someone and think, well, we made it this far. That counts for something, doesn't it? My husband David worked as a senior manager at a tech company in the Bay Area. I was a marketing coordinator at a smaller firm, nothing glamorous. But I enjoyed the work. We lived in a nice townhouse in Mountain View, took one vacation a year, and from the outside probably looked like we had it all figured out, but somewhere along the way, things shifted. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started. Maybe it was when David got his last promotion 3 years ago. Maybe it was gradual, so slow I didn't notice until I was already living in a different marriage than the one I thought I had. David became busier, more important, or at least that's what he told me. He worked late, traveled for conferences, and when he came home he was either on his phone or too tired to talk. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pick up my dry cleaning? Don't forget we have dinner with the Johnsons Saturday. Can you handle the lawn service? I don't have time. I told myself this was normal. This was what happened after a decade of marriage. The passion fades, the routine sets in, and you just make it work. I pushed down that lonely feeling that crept in during quiet evenings when he locked himself in his home office and I sat alone, watching television I wasn't really interested in. But here's what David didn't know. Here's the secret I kept tucked away like a small rebellion against everything our marriage had become. About 18 months ago, lying sleepless beside him one night, I downloaded a language learning app, Japanese. I'd taken a semester of it in college, back when I was a different person with different dreams. I'd loved it, the complexity, the elegance, the way it opened up an entirely different way of thinking about the world. Then I met David, got married, started working, and that dream got filed away in the drawer labeled impractical interests from your youth. But that night, with David snoring beside me, I started again, and I didn't stop. Every evening while he worked late or watched financial news, I sat at the kitchen table with earbuds in, working through lessons. I subscribed to podcasts for learners, started watching Japanese dramas with subtitles, then eventually without them. I didn't tell David, not because I was hiding it exactly, but because I'd learned not to share things he would dismiss. 3 years earlier I'd mentioned wanting to take a photography class. He'd laugh, not meanly, but in that way that made me feel small. Sarah, you take pictures with your iPhone like everyone else. You don't need a class for that. Besides, when would you even have time? After that, I learned to keep my interests quiet. It was easier than defending them. So Japanese became my secret, my private world, and I was good at it, really good. I practice every day, sometimes for 2 or 3 hours. I video chatted with tutors online, joined study groups, even started reading simple novels. By the time a year had passed, I could understand conversational Japanese fluently, not perfectly, but well enough to follow movies, understand podcasts, hold decent conversations with my tutors. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd buried. Every new word I learned, every grammar pattern I mastered, felt like proof that I was still capable of growth, still someone beyond just David's wife. Then one evening in late September, David came home earlier than usual. He actually seemed excited, energized in a way I hadn't seen in months. Sarah, great news, he said, loosening his tie as he walked into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner. We're close to finalizing a partnership with a Japanese tech company. This could be huge for us. The CEO is visiting next week and I'm taking him to dinner at Hoshiri. You'll need to come. I looked up from the vegetables I was chopping. A business dinner? Yeah, Tanaka-san specifically asked if I was married. Japanese business culture, they like to know you're stable, family-oriented. Good optics. He opened the refrigerator, grabbed a beer. You'll just need to look nice, smile, be charming. You know, the usual. Something about the way he said the usual rankled me, but I pushed it aside. Sure, of course. When? Next Thursday, 7 p.m., wear that navy dress, the one with the sleeves. Conservative but elegant. He turned to look at me directly for the first time. And Sarah, Tanaka doesn't speak much English. I'll be doing most of the talking in Japanese. You'll probably be pretty bored, but just smile through it, okay? My heart skipped. You speak Japanese? Picked it up working with our Tokyo office over the years. I'm pretty fluent now. There was pride in his voice. It's one of the reasons they're considering me for the VP position. Not many executives here can negotiate in Japanese. He didn't ask if I spoke it. Didn't wonder if I might have any interest or knowledge. Why would he? In his mind, I was just the wife who would smile and look pretty while the important people talked. I turned back to my cutting board, my hands moving automatically. That sounds wonderful, honey. I'll be there. After he left the room, I stood at the counter, my mind racing. An opportunity had just fallen into my lap. A chance to actually understand a conversation David thought was private. To hear how he really spoke, how he presented himself, how he talked about our life when he thought I couldn't understand. Part of me felt guilty for even thinking this way, but a bigger part, the part that felt increasingly invisible in my own marriage, wanted to know, needed to know, would you have done the same? If you could suddenly understand the private conversations your partner thought were safe, would you listen, or would you walk away, protecting yourself from truths you might not want to hear? The week crawled by. I spent every spare moment refreshing my business Japanese vocabulary, practicing polite speech patterns, making sure I'd be able to follow a professional conversation. I didn't know what I expected to hear. Maybe nothing important. Maybe I was overthinking everything, being paranoid, looking for problems that weren't there. Thursday arrived. I wore the navy dress as requested, paired it with modest heels and simple jewelry. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw exactly what David wanted: a presentable wife who wouldn't embarrass him in front of important clients. The restaurant was in San Francisco, modern and expensive. The kind of place with a waitlist months long. David had used the company account to secure a reservation. We arrived 15 minutes early. David checked his appearance in his phone camera, straightened his already straight tie. Remember, he said as we walked in, just be pleasant. Don't try to participate in the business talk. If Tanaka-san addresses you in English, keep your answers brief. We need him focused on the partnership, not distracted by small talk. I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. Tanaka-san was already seated when we arrived. He stood to greet us, a man in his mid-50s with silver-rimmed glasses and an impeccably tailored suit. David bowed slightly. I followed his lead. They exchanged greetings in Japanese, formal and polite. I smiled, looking appropriately lost, and slid into the chair David pulled out for me. The conversation began in English, surface-level pleasantries. Tanaka-san complimented the restaurant choice, mentioned his hotel, asked if this was our first time hosting international partners. His English was actually quite good, better than David had implied, just accented. Then, as menus arrived, they naturally transitioned into Japanese. David's fluency was impressive, I had to admit. He spoke smoothly, confidently, clearly comfortable in the language. They discussed business projections, market expansion strategies, technical specifications I only partially understood. I sat quietly, sipping water, occasionally smiling when they glanced my way, playing my role. Then Tanaka-san turned slightly toward me, said something in Japanese that I caught, a polite inquiry about what I did for work. David answered for me before I could even pretend not to understand. In Japanese, he said, "Oh, Sarah works in marketing, but it's just a small company. Nothing serious. More of a hobby really, to keep her busy. She mainly takes care of our home." I kept my face neutral, but inside something twisted. A hobby. I'd worked in marketing for 15 years, had managed successful campaigns, built client relationships, but he'd just dismissed my entire career as a way to keep busy. Tanaka-san nodded politely and didn't press further. The dinner continued. Multiple courses arrived, each beautifully presented. I ate slowly, stayed quiet, and listened. Really listened. David was different in Japanese. More aggressive, more boastful. He exaggerated his role in projects, took credit for team efforts, painted himself as more central to the company's success than he actually was. It wasn't egregious, but it was noticeable. The David speaking Japanese was a slightly inflated version of the David I knew. Then the conversation shifted. Tanaka-san mentioned something about work-life balance, about the importance of family support in demanding careers. David laughed, a sound that made my stomach clench. To be honest, David said in Japanese, and I could hear the casual dismissiveness in his tone. My wife doesn't really understand the business world. She's content with her simple life. I handle all the important decisions, the finances, the career planning. She's just there for appearance really. Keeps the house running, looks good at events like this. It works well for me because I don't have to worry about a wife who demands too much attention or has her own ambitions getting in the way. I gripped my water glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Tanaka-san made a non-committal sound. I watched his face, saw a flicker of something discomfort. Maybe, but he didn't challenge David. Instead, he changed the subject slightly. asking about David's long-term goals. The VP position is basically mine, David continued in Japanese. And after that, I'm looking at C-suite within 5 years. I've been positioning myself carefully, building the right relationships. My wife doesn't know this yet, but I've been moving some assets around, setting up some offshore accounts. Just smart financial planning. If my career requires relocating or making big changes, I need the flexibility to move quickly without being tied down by joint accounts and her having to sign off on everything. My blood ran cold. Offshore accounts, moving assets without telling me. I sat there smiling blandly while my husband casually revealed financial maneuvers that sounded very much like he was preparing for a future that didn't include me, or at least one where I wouldn't have access to marital money, but he wasn't done. Tanaka-san asked something about the stress of David's position, whether he had ways to manage it. David's laugh was ugly. I have my outlets. There's someone at work, Jennifer, she's in finance. We've been seeing each other for about 6 months now. My wife has no idea. Honestly, it's been good for me. Jennifer understands my world, my ambitions. She's going places too. We talk strategy, make plans. It's refreshing after coming home to someone who can't discuss anything more complex than what's for dinner. I sat perfectly still. My face felt frozen. Inside, I was shattering into 1,000 pieces. But years of learning to be small and quiet and pleasant kept me in my chair, kept the smile on my face, kept my hands from shaking visibly. An affair, offshore accounts, dismissing me as too simple to understand his world, calling my career a hobby, reducing me to a decorative object who kept house and looked presentable. 12 years of marriage. And this was how he saw me. This was what he said when he thought I couldn't understand. Tanaka-san was definitely uncomfortable now. I could see it in the way he shifted, the way he redirected the conversation back to neutral business topics. He was too polite to call David out, but his responses became more clipped, more formal. The dinner ended. We said our goodbyes in the restaurant lobby. Tanaka-san bowed to me, said in careful English, "It was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Sarah. I wish you well." Something in his eyes, a softness, made me wonder if he understood more than he'd let on, if he'd been as disturbed by David's words as I was. The drive home was quiet. David seemed pleased with himself, humming along to the radio. "That went well," he said. "I think we're going to close this deal." Tanaka seemed impressed. "That's wonderful," I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. At home, David kissed my cheek absently, told me he had emails to catch up on, and disappeared into his office. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, closed the door, and stood in the silence. Then I pulled out my phone and did something I never thought I'd do. I called Emma. Emma had been my college roommate, my best friend before life and distance and David's subtle discouragement of my friendships had pulled us apart. She'd become a family law attorney, had been through her own divorce 5 years ago. We'd reconnected on social media recently, exchanged a few messages, but I hadn't told her anything real about my life. "Sarah?" She answered on the second ring, surprise in her voice. It was almost 11 p.m. "Emma," I said, and my voice broke on the last word. "I need a lawyer. If you were in my place, if you'd just discovered that the person you'd spent 12 years with saw you as nothing more than convenient decoration, would you have made the same call? Or would you have buried the truth and kept pretending everything was fine?" We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything. The dinner, the conversation in Japanese, the offshore accounts, the affair, the years of feeling diminished and dismissed. She listened without interrupting, her legal mind clearly working through what I was telling her. "First," she said when I finished, "I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me?" I breathed. "Second, you need to understand that what he's doing with those offshore accounts could be illegal, definitely unethical. If he's hiding marital assets in anticipation of divorce or just to maintain control, that's financial fraud. We can use that." "I don't have proof," I said. "It was just conversation." "Did you record the dinner?" I felt stupid. "No, I didn't think. I was just trying to process what I was hearing." "That's okay. Here's what we're going to do. Don't confront him yet. I know you want to, but we need to be strategic. Starting tomorrow, you're going to gather documentation, bank statements, tax returns, any financial records you can access. Take photos, forward your self-emails, anything. If he's moving money, there will be a paper trail. We'll find it." "Emma, I'm scared." "I know, honey, but you're also smart and capable. And you just proved that by learning an entire language without him knowing. You can do this. You're not alone anymore." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back at the restaurant. Rage, betrayal, grief, fear, but underneath it all, something else was growing. A cold, clear determination, I wasn't going to be the decorative wife anymore. I wasn't going to be dismissed and diminished and cheated on. I was going to take back control of my life, even if it meant burning down everything I'd built to do it. The next morning, I called in sick to work. David barely noticed, just grunted acknowledgement as he left for the office. The moment his car pulled away, I started searching. David kept files in his home office, organized and meticulous. I found bank statements going back 3 years, tax returns, investment account information. I photographed everything with my phone, uploaded it all to a private cloud drive Emma had set up for me. And there it was, to accounts I'd never seen before, both showing regular transfers. $50,000 moved over the past 8 months to a bank in the Cayman Islands. Our joint savings had been slowly drained without my knowledge. I felt sick, but I kept photographing, kept documenting. Emma had told me to be thorough, so I was thorough. I found emails to printed and filed away, correspondence about investment properties I didn't know we owned, or rather that he owned. Everything was in his name only. And then I found the emails to Jennifer. He'd been careless, printing some exchanges probably to reference figures or dates. But the content was damning, romantic, sexual, making plans for a future that clearly didn't include me. Once I've handled the Sarah situation, one email read, "We can stop hiding the Sarah situation." That's what I'd become. A problem to be handled. I spent 6 weeks quietly gathering evidence, living with a man I now saw clearly for the first time. Every smile was a lie. Every casual touch made my skin crawl, but I played the role. I cooked dinners, asked about his day, pretended nothing had changed. Emma was building the case. I met with her twice a week at her office, bringing new documentation, discussing strategy. We were going to file for divorce and simultaneously report his financial misconduct to his company's ethics board. The offshore accounts violated company policy. She'd discovered he could lose not just our marriage, but his career. "Are you sure you want to go this far?" Emma asked me during one of our sessions. "The company piece will be nuclear. He'll lose everything. He was already planning to leave me with nothing," I said. "He said it himself. He's been preparing for this. I'm just moving first." We decided on a Friday. Emma filed the divorce papers Thursday afternoon. Friday morning, I dressed for work as usual, but instead of going to my office, I went to Emma's. David's HR department would receive our evidence package at 9 o'clock a.m. The divorce papers would be served to him at his office at 9:30. I sat in Emma's conference room drinking coffee. I couldn't taste watching the clock. My phone was off. I didn't want to see his calls or texts when he realized what was happening. At 11, Emma received confirmation. Papers served. Evidence received. David's employer had immediately placed him on administrative leave pending investigation. "How do you feel?" Emma asked, terrified. I admitted. "But right," I stayed at Emma's that night. She had a guest room, had already told me I could stay as long as I needed. She helped me draft emails to my own employer, explaining I'd be taking FMLA leave for personal reasons. We ordered takeout, drank wine, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. David tried calling 47 times that first day, left voicemails ranging from confused to angry to pleading. I didn't listen to them. Emma did, documenting everything for the case. On Saturday, escorted by Emma and a police officer there just as a precaution, I went back to the house to collect my belongings. David was there. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, eyes red. "Sarah, please," he started when he saw me. I held up my hand. "Don't. Just let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been cheating on me. That you've been hiding money. That you called me too simple to understand your world." I paused. I heard every word at that dinner, David. Every single word. His face went white. You don't speak Japanese?" "I've been fluent for over a year." "Funny how you never asked, never wondered what I did with my time when you were too busy with work. Or Jennifer." He sank onto the couch. "The company put me on leave. They're investigating." "Sarah, I could lose my job. That's not my problem anymore." I started walking toward the stairs, toward our bedroom where I needed to pack. "Wait," his voice was desperate. "We can fix this. Couples therapy. I'll end things with Jennifer. We can work through this." I turned back to look at him. Really look at him. This man I'd spent 12 years with, who I loved, who I believed loved me. "You don't want to fix this," I said. "You want to fix your career, your image, your financial situation. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you got caught." "That's not true." "At that dinner, you told Tanaka-san I was just for appearance. That I was too simple, too unambitious. That I was essentially a live-in housekeeper who looked good at events. Do you even remember saying that?" His silence was answer enough. "I'm done being small for you, David. I'm done being the convenient wife who doesn't demand too much. File your countermotions if you want." Fight the divorce. But you're not going to win. And you're not getting away with hiding our assets. I spent 2 hours packing. He didn't try to stop me again. Just sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Would you have felt satisfaction in that moment? Or would you have felt the same strange mixture I did, grief for what I'd thought we had, and relief that I was finally done pretending? The divorce took 8 months. California law required a 6-month waiting period after filing, and we spent those months negotiating the settlement. David's company investigation found sufficient evidence of ethical violations. They terminated him. He found another job eventually, but at a lower level, lower pay. The offshore accounts had to be disclosed and divided. The properties I didn't know about became part of the marital assets. In the end, I walked away with half of everything he'd tried to hide, plus spousal support for 3 years while I rebuilt my own career. But the best part, the thing I never saw coming, happened about 2 months into the divorce process. Tanaka-san reached out through LinkedIn. His message was brief but warm. He'd heard about the divorce, had wondered if I might be interested in a position with his company. They were opening a US office, needed someone who understood both American marketing and Japanese business culture. My unique skill set, he wrote, would be invaluable. I met with him and his team. This time, I spoke Japanese from the first moment. His eyes lit up with genuine respect and something else, maybe a little bit of amusement, that I'd fooled everyone at that dinner. I knew, he said in Japanese at the end of my interview, at the restaurant, the way you held yourself when David spoke about you. I saw the understanding in your eyes. Just for a moment. I'm glad you found your strength. They offered me the position, Senior Marketing Director, salary triple what I'd been making. I accepted. I'm 63 now. That all happened over 20 years ago. But I remember every detail. The divorce, as painful as it was, gave me my life back. I ran that marketing department for 15 years before retiring. I traveled to Japan a dozen times, made genuine friends, became someone who existed beyond being somebody's wife. I never remarried. Dated occasionally, had one serious relationship that lasted 5 years before we amicably parted ways. But I never again made my world small to fit someone else's vision of who I should be. David sent me an email once, about 3 years after the divorce was final. He'd remarried, apologized for how things ended, said he hoped I was well. I never responded. Some chapters don't need an epilogue. I still study Japanese, though now it's purely for pleasure. I read novels, watch films, sometimes tutor young professionals who want to learn. The language that started as a secret escape became the thing that saved me, that showed me I was capable of more than I'd been allowing myself to believe. That dinner at Hashiri was the worst and best night of my life. Worst because I heard truths that shattered my reality. Best because it finally pushed me to act, to stop accepting less than I deserved. So if you're reading this, if you're in a marriage where you feel invisible, where your interests are dismissed, where you're made to feel small, pay attention to that feeling. Sometimes the secret you keep isn't just a hobby or a hidden skill. Sometimes it's the very thing that will save you when everything else falls apart, and when you're ready, when you've gathered the evidence and found your people and steeled yourself for what comes next. Don't be afraid to let the truth speak, because on the other side of that pain is a life where you get to be fully yourself, where your voice matters, where you're not just decorative, but essential. And that life, my dear, is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every difficult choice, every moment of standing your ground. That life is worth fighting for.